Oh, this is gonna be good. You know how long I've been waiting for this? Woo, I'm about to make a name for myself here.
And I want to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine at this point and some of the fallout from the movie. It's been about a month now since it's come out. One of the most successful movies of the year is sitting at over $1.2 billion worldwide. Tremendous
Wow.
success. Officially the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. And I think a lot of that, of course, can be attributed to just like the fun that was had with the film. But of course, there were a lot of surprises, which by this point, it's all out there. I mean, it's all over the internet. If you've not seen the movie at this point, you probably don't really care to see it. But one of the big elements about the film was the return of some of these iconic legendary characters from other Marvel movies. And two of those in particular were Channing Tatum as Gambit and also Wesley Snipes as Blade, which, you know, those certainly got huge reactions if you were in those first few showings of Deadpool and Wolverine. But in the wake of the movie's enormous success, there's been some talk and some chatter about what might come next for some of these characters after being, I guess, rescued or revitalized from the pits of Marvel's deepest recesses, the pits of the Marvel Fox universe, and sort of giving them new life for a new generation.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen so much as Ryan Reynolds himself, the star of the film, the producer of the movie, sort of go on an active campaign to not make this the end for these characters, to actually make this a jumping off point for what might come in the future. And he's campaigning actively to not only have Channing Tatum return as Gambit, but to give him his own movie, which is something that technically never happened. That was supposed to be a thing produced by Fox. He was gearing up to play this character. He was super excited about it. It ultimately never happened, most specifically due to the acquisition of Fox by Disney. But also Wesley Snipes' Blade. He is actively campaigned for a movie for Wesley Snipes as well, which is just a completely different place than where we thought that they would have been, because Ryan Reynolds and Wesley Snipes were not on the best of terms for a long time.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about this just because it's an interesting place in which we are at now, where, you know, it's almost like anything is possible, but is it probable is probably the more realistic question to ask. And I want to start with the Gambit piece of it, because you know, Channing Tatum himself, he's been talking about the role in numerous interviews since the movie has come out, and he actually made a really emotional Instagram post about his experience, and I pulled out a piece of it that I want to read quickly. He said, quote, "I thought I had lost Gambit forever, but he being Ryan Reynolds, fought for me and Gambit. I will owe him probably forever, because I'm not sure how I could ever do something that would be equal to what this has meant to me," end quote. Again, Channing Tatum was super excited about being this character, but just never got the chance to do so. But now having this chance to come back and do this in this movie obviously meant a lot to him. But also, just like a day ago, Ryan Reynolds has continued to pour gasoline on this fire. He released a deleted scene from the movie, likely with the approval of Disney and Marvel. But he released a deleted scene, which basically confirms that Channing Tatum's Gambit character did survive the battle in the void in the third act of that movie, which we already suspected. But what we saw that was new here is that he might have found a way out of the void, out of that wasteland, because they basically teased that one of the interdimensional portals that we see typically Doctor Strange utilize opens up, and we can see the reflection in his eyes. It basically insinuates that he's going to leave the void and go to some other universe. And so what I want to ask you is do you want to see Channing Tatum back as Gambit? Do you want to see Channing Tatum back as Gambit in his own movie, which is technically a separate question? And do you even think that that's a realistic ask at this point, just considering, I guess, where the MCU is going to go with potentially a new X-Men team that they would likely want to kickstart in the next few years? I don't know. What do you make of this being a thing that's either likely or unlikely, and also your personal desire to see this or not?
Man, this is one of those things where it's hard for me to gauge how I feel, because there's so many, I think, mixed ideas and emotions in my head regarding Channing Tatum as Gambit having his own film. That's a mixed emotion, because on one hand, I would love to see him, I think, get his chance, right? To say, like, dude, I never got to make this film. Let's do this. Like, I can be yeah, let's make a movie. Do this thing that I never got to do before. But does that and maybe this is me thinking too hard because Marvel has not yet established anything like DC has with Elseworld things. But now it's like, okay, what does Gambit look like in the MCU after a movie comes out? Like, is he, is that how we get to a different X-Men film? Does that come before? Does that come after? There's just so many questions. Is he now in the main X-Men team? Is that the Gambit we're going to see with whoever the new Rogue is? Like, that's a lot of questions we have to answer there. And I don't know that I want to see all that. You know what I mean? I don't know if I want to see Channing Tatum as Gambit anymore. I really don't know. Like, I have to see it in that capacity. And there's another thought in my head there that's like, you just came back and made a bunch of jokes about this Gambit. Can I take you seriously in a new Gambit movie now? Because you've established kind of like this more silly take at the character. I don't know. I don't know if he could switch that gear and turn it into something that does feel more true to Gambit. Gambit's a pretty serious character, actually. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I don't know what that looks like. Is it probable right now? It feels very not likely to me. But what I will say on the flip side of that is the Ryan Reynolds champion this thing is important. Disney saying, hell yeah, y'all can release this footage. It's kind of important. You know what I mean? So like, it's a really mixed bag for me, man. But that's how I feel about it. I'm kind of two minds and of two feelings. It just, I have to see how a lot of that stuff plays out.
You telling me you don't want to see Gambit make a name for himself? No, I think it's fair to say all of that. It's hard just because of, I mean, just where things are, and
yeah,
it's like
weird.
we have a Gambit now technically, but also there is like the X-Men official proper that are supposed to come, and this is also a movie that never happened. There's so much that's wrapped up into it that complicates it. I'll to first address the point about the tone. I don't think that's going to be, if they do a movie, I don't think that'll be a hurdle really at all. I think it'll be pretty easy to snap out of that. Like, he was silly in that movie. Okay, we have new. All you have to do, like, once we see a trailer, if we see that the movie is serious, we will adjust expectations properly. I don't think that'll be necessarily a challenge going into the film if that's the direction that they were to go in. I do think he'll be back as Gambit in some capacity. I think that they'll want to work with Channing Tatum again. I think that he obviously is enthusiastic. He'll be very, very fun to work with, more than likely. I'm sure he's game for almost anything. I think he'll be back. There's an easy way to do that now, obviously, with the multiverse being a thing. So I don't think that's going to be an issue either. His own movie, the bigger question that I have is if they're ever going to explore solo movies for any X-Men. Like, is that even a desire that they want to do? Like, are they going to do Wolverine movies? Are they going to do Rogue movies? Are they going to do Magneto movies? I don't know if they even have an interest in doing that. So to think that Gambit would just all of a sudden get a movie, I find that hard to believe. And I think you made a very important point about the whole, I guess, Elseworlds, Otherworld sort of situation that they don't really utilize. They don't really lean into the idea of just making standalone films that are not connected to the MCU in some way. They haven't explored that. If that was something that they frequently did, I feel like that this would make more sense and can be more viable. But because they don't do that and they tend to work in everything somehow, I can't see just a solo Gambit movie per se. But I do think what they're doing here in releasing this is getting a feeler out for people's reactions to the character. I mean, obviously he went viral. There were the memes of just his performance. Channing Tatum was great in the movie. He was very funny, very charismatic. And I think that'll be enough to say, like, yeah, we'll bring him back. We'll have him do something. What that looks like is, it's hard to say. But I can't see a solo movie, and I can't even see him being a mainstay for whatever a new X-Men team is going to be, because I think they're going to want to start from scratch. I think they're going to want to cast all new original actors for a new X-Men team. You know, people that we don't have a history with, even though, like, we don't really have a history with him either. I think they'll want to just start completely over with an X-Men team. And so I am all here for him coming back, though. I do want him to try to get as many bats at this as he possibly can, considering he never did get that movie. Now, potentially even more complicated is the blade of it all.
Way more.
Because Ryan Reynolds did not stop with the campaigning at Gambit. He he also posted on Instagram a picture of him and Wesley Snipes. And he said this, quote, "The reaction when Wesley Snipes enters the movie is the most intense thing I've heard in a theater. People screaming with uninhibited joy and love is also the sound of a legacy. More Blade, please. Hashtag Daywalker, asterisk, 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 a Logan-style send-off specifically," end quote. So Ryan Reynolds, again, up to no good, but he knows what he's doing here. He wields tremendous power and influence. And also, this type of campaigning has worked before for Deadpool himself. We talked a lot about that with the making of the Deadpool movies, that releasing test footage, releasing deleted scenes, tweeting, all of this stuff actually made that movie a possibility. It made it real. And so I think he's doing everything he possibly can to try to service the fans and say, like, well, Wesley Snipes here, he also had like kind of a shitty send-off. Blade Trinity, not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. And I know you guys are trying to do your own thing, your new thing with Mahershala really soon here, but why can't we just do a separate story where we see, I guess, an old, grizzled, maybe beaten down Blade, played by Wesley Snipes, who is in the 60s, come back and do something that can, maybe properly send the character off. What say you about that? Just, again, considering the really, really confounding state of things as it relates to the Blade character in the MCU. The fact that, we've been talking about a new iteration for going on 6 years now, and nothing has come of that just yet. But also now Wesley Snipes comes back, and he does get a huge reaction. I mean, he was the loudest reaction in the movie when we saw that film. When anybody popped up, it was like, oh, wow, this was a huge, huge get that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. So what would you say to possibly Wesley Snipes suiting up as Blade in his own movie one more time?
I mean, I'm down for Blade anything. I'm like, oh, a Blade thing being made, Wesley Snipes, give it to me. But it does make things, I think, complicated in general. Even similar, I think finding a tone for Old Man Logan in the way Logan went down was hella impressive. Like, the fact that y'all made that work and y'all made it feel the way you felt as a good send-off. I mean, everything, I think it was just lightning in a bottle to me with Logan. And what I'm afraid of is not being able to get that in Wesley Snipes' own movie as Blade. And part of that is some nerdy stuff, right? Like, Blade is a vampire, ain't supposed to age. You know what I'm saying? He's like this immortal dude that's not supposed to age. How do we even get to Old Man Blade? Like, what does that even look like in the story? So that's one part of it. And the other part of it is the two Blades happening at once thing. It's interesting. And have we ever ran into that before in that way? I mean, maybe multiple Batmans is happening soon, right? But like
multiple Jokers, technically. But Jokers, it's been strictly DC that's kind of done that.
It's kind of done that. Yeah, two Blades is like, huh? Like, I don't know what that looks like, and I hate for one to step on the other's toes in any way, especially if they're not connected in any way. You know what I mean? I don't know. It just feels weird to me to have to say, oh no, we have two Blades at the same time in Wesley Snipes. Maybe if that movie happened first, if the Wesley Snipes movie happened first, I'd be like, cool. But in my mind, the way production is happening and all these things are going down, Mahershala is going to be Blade on screen before Wesley is going to be Blade on screen. And that complicates things. It makes things really weird for the MCU. Again, like we were just talking about, this is like an Elseworld thing. And we were like, hey, Wesley Snipes, go have your last Blade movie. I'm all here for it. We here. But because Marvel has done so much in these past couple of years to be like, and Kevin Feige to be like, everything is canon, it's weird. I don't know. It'll just be awkward for what's to go down. Again, I'm here for it. Here for all things Blade. You know me. I'll be front row, ready to go, baby. But it will be weird with the logistics of things. So yeah, it's another weird one.
Yeah. In all honesty, I feel like that this has like the least amount of chance to actually come to fruition and happen. I do think the Marvel Studios is very committed to making this new Blade with Mahershala Ali come hell or high water. I think that they want to make this movie. If that movie actually happens, it's a different conversation, but I do think that they're committed to it. I think we've seen that from them, the fact that they are going back to the drawing board over and over again. They continue to hire writers and directors. Like, that shows like we want to make this movie. We just have to make sure it's right and ready. And I don't think they're going to undermine that anticipation to make another Blade movie with a character and an actor who hasn't portrayed him before Deadpool and Wolverine for 20 years. I just don't think they're going to do that. And they're not in the business of doing that. We just haven't seen them explore stories like this before. That's not to say that they can't. It's not to say that it's not possible. They could if they very well wanted to. It just doesn't seem likely. And I think maybe the best case scenario of what can come from this is, again, Wesley Snipes can come back in some form or fashion. Maybe he's which also might be kind of weird because like Mahershala is 50, Wesley's 60. I don't know if he's like a mentor to like the new Blade.
Yeah, he looks older. I'll say that. Wesley looks way older than Mahershala.
He definitely does. I think you could pull it off. You could figure out a way if there's some way to do a mentorship angle, a passing of the torch. Have Mahershala do the standalone movie, get the foundation set up, and then maybe in a crossover film or a sequel or something, there could be like an interaction between two Blades. They can Spider-Man No Way Home it. That could be cool stuff. Yeah. But a dedicated Wesley Snipes movie as Blade, that seems highly unlikely at this point. It could be good with the right filmmakers behind it. I'm sure it could be something that's like really, really good. I just don't see them necessarily greenlighting that, considering their plans already with Mahershala. But you never know. All things are technically possible, I guess, now with the multiverse, as we've seen time and time again in many of these movies. But I do think the multiverse it's here to stay, at least for the time being, because they have been successful. When you look at No Way Home and now Deadpool and Wolverine, these movies have made a lot of money when you talk about bringing characters back. So we'll see how it all works out.